sounds are really translated in the brain as something which has a meaning for them.
View for 7 seconds. Speech off.
Well, this is interesting.
Yes, socialize and be reasonably comfortable in a whole lot of different situations.
From about 3 to 14 weeks, 12 or 14 weeks old, they are in something called a socialization period. And that sounds like, oh, you should, bring them out to meet a lot of people or dogs. And that's part of it. You should bring them out to meet a lot of people or dogs. They have to be exposed to the types of things they're going to encounter in their life. And this is a period in their life when they're generally open and not predisposed to being fearful or anxious.
So go ahead and run that vacuum when they're small.
Yes, run the vacuum right by them, make it playful, make it fun. Turn on all the fans, have the air conditioner come on and off, ring the doorbell. You want them to feel like that's normal and not have to be alerting or worried every time one of those things happens.
How do puppies learn to use their voices to whine or bark?
What's interesting is that they are making sounds almost right away, but they're not hearing their own sounds right away, and they're not getting a lot of direct feedback that they can perceive from their sounds right away. So while they're still puppies, you'll hear them come out with sounds, whether it's a whimper or a squeal or a little bit of a bark. And the question is what the environment does to react to that. If when they bark, everyone comes running, a person comes to see what's happening, then they'll learn that barking is a way to communicate. But if really nothing happens, it's less likely that they'll continue to do that the next time.
So we can play a role in them not being just indiscriminate barkers later on.
Potentially, right. I don't know that it's easy because you really have to be there regularly, giving them the right sort of feedback or lack of feedback.
Hell?
But yeah, dogs who aren't exposed to a lot of barkers don't get a lot of response from when they do bark from people very early on are less likely to
There's
be
the
barking
plaza.
later.
Alexandra, how does being part of a litter for the first few weeks of a puppy's life help that puppy learn not to be a big biter later on?
What's interesting is that not just their siblings, but also their mom really tell them how much is permissible. And what we have to realize here is when talking about puppies and dogs is that they examine the world through their mouth. They don't have hands, so what do? They lick things, they bite things, they just mouth at things, and they mouth at each other. If it's too much, their siblings will let them know right away. When they're nursing too long, their mom will start to scold them and tell them to move on. So they get a lot of feedback early on about what's socially acceptable and not acceptable. Unfortunately, that's all from other dogs, right? So they learn what's okay with other dogs. And sometimes it's hard to translate that to what's okay with people. A dog is okay with another dog kind of playfully biting their ear, but we're almost never okay with that, right? And so the best thing we could do when we bring a dog into our household is understand they're gonna be using their mouth a little bit and just gently let them know when a bite is too much of a bite.
There's so much we need puppies to learn in order to be good members of the household, but it turns out our misunderstanding of what they're capable of can cause problems. What some people would call misbehavior, you try to understand as normal puppy behavior. Can you give us an example of that?
The first example that comes to mind is, again, this mouthing behavior, that dogs are going to investigate the world by mouth. And immediately, on coming to our homes, that is a misbehavior for them. So even though they could mouth each other, mouth their mom, mouth anything in their little puppy den when they were growing up, now suddenly they mouth something that we don't want them to, not just our hand or our nose, but my shoes on the floor, that book I'm reading, and we think that's misbehavior. And I really think that we could do a better job of trying to understand where that behavior comes from. It comes from the fact that they're curious about things. And the best thing we can do for them is set up the environment so there are fewer things for them to inappropriately mouth right in their mouth view. and then just take the things away that they do put in their mouth that we don't want.
She never closed
So
the
it's on us
door.
to put those shoes away if we don't want them chewed.
We always do basically a child proofing of our home when we have children. We don't just assume that they understand, like, don't stick your finger in that outlet. We cover the outlet, or we just make it inaccessible so that they don't have to learn through sort of a bad experience. And similarly, yes, I think we should put our shoes away and appreciate that that's how they see the world and through their mouth, and it's on us to make it more inviting for them to find the right things with their mouth and not the wrong things.
So I think we all understand that puppies will go through an adolescent phase where they're achieving sexual maturity. Do they also have something that correlates to human adolescence in that they can be a little deliberately rebellious during a certain time?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I wish more people understood. They go through exactly an adolescence from about 6 months of age or so, maybe roughly when a female dog will have her first heat, her first sort of sexual maturity, to maybe even 2 years old. So you might think you have a puppy if you have a year-old dog, but you really have a kind of preteen or teenager, and they do exactly those kinds of rebellious things. It's the way they're continuing to learn about the world. Now they're just learning about things like your rules or how you want them to behave, and trying to stretch the boundary of what's permissible somewhat. And the reason I think it's really important that people who live with dogs understand this is because that period of time can be a very frustrating period, and it's a time when a lot of people relinquish their dogs to shelters, decide like, gee, I taught them to do all these commands, they were doing so well, and now they've just reverted, they're like a hopeless dog, I can't handle it. And furthermore, they're much bigger now too. That's actually just a phase that they're going through. They'll come out of it. You have to give them a little bit of a break and be patient.
What can we learn, what should we learn as dog people by observing our puppies? Like, what should we be watching for to understand who they are as an individual animal?
You know, I think that in the early days of living with the dog, there's so many things happening, and we have sense as new dog owners that we want to kind of get it right, and we want them to learn the things that they need to learn all the commands, learn to sit at our request, and learn to come when we call them, and to pee outside and so forth, that we stop really looking at them, right? It's hard to observe them in that time because there's sort of too much to do. But I think they're always telling us with their behavior what they understand and what they're interested in and what they need. And just some time of kind of meditatively watching them and seeing, what do they do when right before they need to pee? Do they look at you? Do they look at the door? How are they already showing you that they understand that something has to be communicated in order for you to help them get to a place where they can pee? That's really valuable time. So, and it can also help any kind of training you're doing to see that and work off of the behaviors they're doing that show what they understand or beginning to understand about the human world.
Your final piece of advice is that we should expect that your puppy will not be who you think nor act as you hope. How can we learn to manage our expectations?
I think we come in because of the way breeds especially are marketed to us with this idea that we're getting a kind of reliable.
You see that
product.
7-Eleven over there?
We're getting a dog that's friendly with children, or that likes to go on runs, or that loves to swim. And then it makes us kind of forget that we're actually just meeting an individual.
That's the one Frank goes to, actually.
Non-human other animal who has their own personality.
You take a right
is not just
on Marvin Road. You go down 2 blocks and you take a right.
And concerns and delights, and
on
that's the thing, I think, that's gonna get
you take a right on Villa
and
Court.
have a relationship with them in the long term. When I hear about people,
Frank, that's where Frank
people's
lives,
dogs, as I do a lot,
but not for long. You know why?
Go out and
Because his apartment.
People are never saying to me, "Oh,
caught on fire."
They're just like a golden retriever. They're
I
saying,
know.
He's
His
such a
daughter's
character.
bed
He likes to roll in this. He always
was
comes up
destroyed.
and bumps me on the nose in the morning. They talk about the individual things about the dog, and those are the things that I wish
So
we
knowing
were
that he's
more
a
open to.
a
in the
good
early
man and wouldn't
months of
have
living
his
with a
friends in a
dog,
place that
and
could
there's
spontaneously
fewer
catch fire,
expectations about who they have to be
we ain't
to
having
be
a
a good
party on
companion.
Sunday.
Alexandra Horowitz is a senior research fellow, head of the Dog Cognition Lab at Barnard College, and author of The Year of the Puppy,
But,
How Dogs Become Themselves.
Debbie
Joined
is
us in February.
taking
Coming
a
up,
few
how
blind
cats
people
actually decided
to the
become
Red
domesticated.
Rock Cafe. Remember we were talking about Red Rock?
Yeah.
That's after a short
She invited me to go on Monday. And she was thinking 2 or 3 o'clock. I don't know if we're going
Red Rock Cafe, son. That's the one over here by.
Providence Road.
Okay.
We'll go past it.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing your Friday evening with us. You're listening to Think here on 90.7
Would you take me?
WFAE and WFAE.org. I'm
Don't we
Della
have-
Friedman.
Don't we have
Did you know that your smart
Ashton?
speaker is also a radio? Ask it to.
I don't know if we're going
WFAE.
swimming on
You can
Monday.
listen
We
to
might
the
or may,
station
we
live
may.
as you go
Huh?
about your day. Remember, just
I want to hear this thing when it comes back on. I'm gonna borrow your phone
For what?
tonight. So I need to fix my calendar. Okay.
Okay.
sunny tomorrow in Charlotte. A high expected near 84. Clear skies tomorrow
yes.
night with a low near 62. Hello,
Cowboy
I'm Nikki
water.
Beatty. Join me for this week's Arts Hour from the BBC. With South Korean film composer Jung Jae-il on scoring the Oscar-winning Parasite and the hit series Squid Game, Irish actor Cillian Murphy talks Oppenheimer, and we hear from Israeli author Ayelet Gunda Goshen and Angolan writer and musician Kala Kapalanga. That's all in the Arts Hour from the BBC.
Tomorrow evening at 10 p.m.
Hi, this is Laura from WFAE's membership team. You already know you don't have to subscribe to or hear commercials on WFAE. You might
Yeah,
even
you
know
do.
that you can listen and read the stories on our website or app for free as
How many
well.
beers did you
But do you know
have,
why? It's because
4.5.
another reliable news should be free, so they became a sustaining member. It's like a pay it forward line at the drive-thru, but less
You meet a lot of
annoying.
different people.
Join the line by making a gift
Yeah.
today at 704-549-9000 or WFAE.
I met 2 teachers, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
From where?
Well, they both work at Oakhurst Elementary. They're both in their early 30s, and one's from California and one's from Florida.
This is Think. I'm Chris Boyd. Today we're talking about pets, how they
Dog.
evolved, how they developed, and our
I saw
relationships.
dogs.
We turned out how house cats domesticated themselves. Jonathan B. Losses is an evolutionary biologist at Washington University.
Oh, they
in St.
tore down
Louis.
that Chick-fil-A.
And he's the author
Yeah,
of
they
The
did.
Cat's Meow, How Cats
noticed that
Evolved
today.
from Savannah.
Yeah.
Why?
He joined us.
Frank is
Jonathan, welcome to Think.
shitting bricks because he thinks his neighborhood's gonna get
So the
bought out.
cats we keep as pets
He
are
thinks
descended
he
from
thinks it's gonna
African wild
gentrify.
cats, which to the naked eye look a lot like house cats
Over
with
that
extra
Chick-fil-A.
long legs and tails with the ends dipped in black ink. Genetically, though, they are not nearly as different as, say, modern dogs are to wolves. Is that right?
Absolutely, 100% correct.
How do other species of small wild cats native to different continents compare with one another? Like, are a Chinese mountain cat and a European wild cat very distinct from an African wild cat?
No, they are not.
That is
But
so
there
interesting. I
are
want to
many
hear
other
this.
small species of felines. There are actually more than 30 species of small cats around the world, and most people don't know most of them. Things like the tigrina and the oncilla and the marbled cat and the Bornean bay cat. So there are many different wild species of small cats, and some of them are somewhat different from wild cats. They look different, they live in different habitats, they have particular adaptations. So there are a variety of different wild cat species.
What does it mean to say that a particular animal has been fully domesticated?
First, I should say it's not a scientific term. It's a little bit of a judgment. But consider, for example, the dog, which is very different from the wolf in appearance and in behavior and so on. And the same is true of, say, pigs and their ancestors, which are wild swine. or cattle and their ancestors. They're just very different in many different ways, genetically, behaviorally, anatomically. By contrast, the domestic cat is not very different at all from the African wildcat.
So our pet cats are maybe best described as what, somewhat domesticated? I realize this is not a scientific term.
They can adapt so well in wildlife.
Yes, and that's exactly right. People use different terms like semi-domesticated or barely domesticated, and I think that's accurate.
Is that why our pet cats come in a fairly limited range of sizes and shapes as compared with dogs, where like a greyhound and a Pomeranian and a Great Dane are all the exact same species?
Yes, that's exactly right. One of the reasons it's possible that that's just a matter of time, that dogs were domesticated at least 15,000 years ago, or maybe as much as 40,000 years ago. By contrast, cats may have been domesticated possibly only 4,000 years ago.
Wow.
So there hasn't been that much time. And that may be one reason why cats are less variable than dogs.
Of course, a lot of the cats that are making more cats these days are not our pets. They're the ones that live in neighborhoods and sort of are on their own. How does that affect the way they will evolve?
Well, yes, this is a very good point, that we might think it would be great to develop a cat that was better suited for living in apartments and not going outside and not hunting. And you might think, well, if we just that's the where the domestic cat is headed. But the fact is that most of the cats that people acquire most cats in the United States are neutered, and so they are not contributing genetically to the next generation. Most cats that people get are feral cats that are living outside and are unowned, and people capture them to try to give them a better life. And that's where people that's where kittens can be adopted from shelters or some of the cats that you find in pet stores. So those cats are not living in homes, and so they're not adapting to living in homes. They have the genetics for living outside. And if anything, we are capturing the friendliest, the least cautious of those cats, of those outdoor cats, and removing them from the gene pool. Yeah. So the outdoor cats may be, if anything, getting wilder and gregarious, because those are the ones that we don't capture and continue breeding outside. So it would be nice to think that cats are evolving to become even more domesticated, but for the most part, they're not.
How important is the difference between what are called stray cats and feral cats?
Well, there are a lot of different terms applied to unowned outdoor cats, and there are lots of variations. But at the extreme, there are many cats that live outside, but that are cared for by people. Many people feed these cats; they provide them plenty of food. On the other hand, there are some cats that are completely living a wild life, away from people. They capture all their prey in the ancestral wildcat way, and they're truly wild animals. And those are animals that are called feral cats. And then there are gradations in between that.
So Jonathan, if most of our pet cats are not pedigreed and may not even, be mixed descendants of pedigreed cats, is there a word like mutt to describe these multi-breed kitties the way there is for dogs?
There is a word for that. There's several words, and sometimes, the polite term is to call them domestic short hairs and domestic long hairs. That basically means not a pedigreed cat. You could use mutt. In Britain, they use the term moggy. So there are terms like that. But I do want to point out one thing. These cats are not mixed breed. The results of one ancestor was a Persian cat and the other was a Siamese cat. Most cats do not have any ancestors that were pedigreed cats. All their ancestry has been these moggies, if you will. And that's different from dogs. In the United States, about half of the dogs that people have are pedigreed. They're a member of a breed. And most of the rest are mixed breed, that their ancestors were two different breeds that were bred together. And in cats, that's not true. Most cats are not pedigreed, and they don't have any ancestors who were either.
Cat breeders have started to select for cats that look more look more distinct from one another than they once did. Tell us about this 1938 copy of National Geographic you found that featured a photo of Persian cats and a photo of Siamese cats.
Yes, there's a wonderful article, a very long article in National Geographic. I think it's called The Panther of the Hearth. And it has lots of pictures of cats, including many Persian cats and many Siamese cats. And frankly, they don't look very different. The Persian cats have a slightly shorter nose, but they all look like typical normal cats. Well, since that time, breeders have radically changed the appearance of both Persian cats and Siamese cats. Siamese cats today now have a very long, angular face with really big ears. It's as if somebody grabbed the nose of a Siamese cat and just pulled it forward, making it very long and sharp. And they're very slender, wispy cats. On the other hand, the Persian cat has basically had its nose disappear. They have selected cats that have basically two nostrils situated between their eyes and no external nose. That if you look at them in profile, there's no nose there. And why they have done that, to be honest, I couldn't tell you. People think they have a very sweet, baby-like expression. So breeders have transformed both of these breeds greatly in ways that some people like and other people don't like. There is actually a problem with Persian cats is by essentially getting rid of the nose, they've caused all kinds of breathing problems and problems with the eye ducts. And so many of these cats have health issues. This is something that goes on in some dog breeds as well, short-nosed, short-muzzled dog breeds like pugs and English bulldogs. And this is bad for the cats and dogs, and people really shouldn't be doing it. Some breeds of cats, they just look different, but they're healthy, and it's not really a problem. But things like this shouldn't go on.
Jonathan, what do we know about how the first small wild cats were scooped up from where they were living in nature and brought to live among humans?
Well, the first thing that we know is that they weren't scooped up. We didn't do it. They did it themselves. And what happened was this occurred in the area that's called the Fertile Crescent. It's the place where civilization first began, where people settled down, stopped being mobile hunter-gatherers, and started living in villages, and started farming, started agriculture. And so as you know, farmers, they grow as much food as they can in the good season and then store the excess for leaner times. And so if you can picture a hut full of grain or some other crop, well, that is just a big bounty for rodents. So the rat and the mouse population took advantage of that and exploded. And in turn, that attracted African wildcats, at least some of them. The ones that were bold enough to enter the village had all of these wonderful, delicious rodents to eat. And so they started hanging around our habitations, taking advantage of what was there. So people didn't intentionally, at least at the outset, do anything. It was the cats who took the opportunity. But then people saw the cats eating the rodents and realized that was a good thing. And so maybe they started treating them nicely, perhaps putting out some food for them, or perhaps providing a warm, dry place for them to take shelter. And again, the boldest cats, the ones that genetically had the behavioral temperament to be willing to go inside a hut to eat a dish of food or to lie in the corner, those are the ones that benefited. And so people gave them more food, and cats kept on adapting to being friendly with people to get what they wanted from us. And eventually the African wildcat turned into the domestic cat.
I appreciate the distinction that the first cats to live near humans were not compelled to do so. They did it of their own volition. It feels very on brand for cats. It's hard to make a cat do anything it does not want to do.
Yeah.
True.
So if cat keeping started in the Fertile Crescent, what do we know about how it spread around the world?
Well, it spread in a couple directions. They almost surely left that region from Egypt, and they basically shipped out on ships because maritime sailors understood that cats were good for the rodents on their ships. The Egyptians tried to stop that because they really treasured their cats and they didn't want them getting out, but they were unsuccessful. And then so cats showed up in Greece, maybe somewhere between 500 BC, maybe earlier. From there they went to Rome, and then from the Roman Empire, they spread throughout Europe.
I like nothing more than a little conversation with a cat where it meows and I make a meowing sound. Does this happen only among cats that live with humans?
Yes, that's correct. That people who live with other species, all small species of cats can meow. And if you want to entertain yourself, go on the internet and type things like ocelot. No, don't type ocelot because that's a heavy metal band. But try bobcat meow or circle meow, and you'll hear other species of cats meowing, small cats. However, people who are familiar with them, like zookeepers who get in the cages with them, and these small cats can be very friendly, those cats do not meow to people. It turns out that only the domestic cat meows regularly to people.
My guest, Jonathan B. Losses, is an evolutionary biologist at Washington University in St. Louis and author of The Cat's Meow, How Cats Evolved from the Savannah to Your Sofa. This is Think. I'm Chris Boyd.
Panthers can meow.
How much language do cats understand?
Well, that's a good question. They certainly understand their names. People have done studies, and a cat knows its name from the name of some other cat. And it's not like a dog where they turn around and start, sticking their tongue out and wagging their tail. But if you look carefully, they will turn their head a little bit, or their ear will perk up, and they do that more when they hear their own name. So they do know their name, and they also know when the person they live with is speaking to them. That people talk to all pets in a more high-pitched tone that they use towards children. And again, scientists have shown that a cat can distinguish when the person it's living with is talking to the cat using its cat voice from when it's talking to someone else. So they can understand that much at least.
We all think our cats are brilliant. What is the evidence, though, that domesticated, semi-domesticated cats may be just a little bit less smart than their cousins in the wild?
Well, I'm not sure they're less smart, but they do have smaller brains. And that is actually true of many domesticated species. They have smaller brains than their wild ancestors. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're not as smart, because the part of the brain that is smaller is the part that's involved in being cautious and being alert. And so the idea is that domesticated wild animals have to be kind of on the lookout all the time. They have to be very wary. Even cats get killed by larger predators quite a lot. But a domesticated animal that was equally as high-strung would not work very well. A loud noise would set it off, or just a sudden movement, and they would be stressed all the time. And so the idea is that domesticated animals have shrunk that part of the brain so that they are less responsive to external stimuli, so that they can live comfortably around humans and all the noises.
There's the open tap.
They don't get much credit for caring, maybe, but it turns out cats are pretty good at reading the emotions of their human companions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So how do they do that?
Well, cats are very observant, and they pay quite a bit of attention to us, and they learn where particular expressions are correlated with particular behaviors or moods that we have. And so they're really dogs are good at that, but so are cats. There have been some interesting studies that how cats interact and rely on the people they live with. For example, if you show a cat something that is scary to a cat, and in this particular study, there was a big fan with a bunch of green ribbons in front of it. So you turn the fan on and the ribbons start fluttering and making noise and so on. Cats that haven't seen that before find that scary. But what the scientists observed is if you did that with a cat and the person that cat lived with, the cat will look to the person to say, should I be afraid or not? And would read the person's response in guiding its own response. So they're very good at reading our emotions.
Okay, very quickly, I would not have thought to ask this question, except that it comes up in the book. Cat breeders are sort of changing the body shapes of cats all the time. Could we someday have a tiny but harmless saber-toothed kitty to curl up with?
Well, frankly, I think it's not impossible. It turns out that saber teeth evolved at least 3 times in cats or close relatives of cats and also once in marsupials, the relative of the koalas and the kangaroos. So it can't be that hard to evolve the saber-tooth condition because it's occurred at least 4 times in mammals. I think that if people wanted to try to select for long-teethed cat, they might be able to produce over some period of time a saber-toothed cat. Now, is anyone going to do that? Probably not. Is it a good idea? I'm not so sure, but I think it's not impossible that it could actually happen.
Jonathan B. Lossus is an evolutionary biologist at Washington University in St. Louis, and he's the author of The Cat's Meow, How Cats Evolved from the Savannah to Your Sofa. He joined us in May. Coming up, the connection we have with our animals and the grief we feel when they're gone.
I want people not to feel guilty and not to feel like they've failed their animals, especially after their animals have gone.
That's after a short break.
Now.
This is Think on 90.7 WFAE and WFAE.org. I'm Della Freeman. Coming up at 10 on The World as families in the United Kingdom get ready for the new school year. Here's some added stress. More than 150 schools have been identified as being in danger of seeing a building collapse. And that number could rise to more than 1,000. Why? Because the concrete used in these school buildings is now expired and potentially dangerous. We'll hear about that coming up on The World at 10 o'clock.
There was a bunch of rugrats over there at Resident Culture, Daddy. Yeah, in the earlier part, they all started clearing out about
the show that's become the voice of the region. Will commemorate 25 years of insightful interviews and engaging conversations. Mike and the entire Charlotte Talk staff.
When I first got there,
and
I felt bad for those 2 poor teachers because they came like to a brewery. They said, it's the first week of school is done. We want to get toasted. And it was a bunch of rugrats.
There are people who support WFAE because they appreciate the thought-provoking, balanced approach to politics and government. There are others who love the interviews and profiles of artists and cultural figures. Some support WFAE for coverage of the economy, technology, science, and the environment. What moves you when you listen to WFAE? Whatever it is, please support.
I know, that's why I was understanding, Daddy, because I know you were blocking the way.
And thanks.
Yeah, I didn't know they closed. They closed at 10, Daddy.
Expected near 84 and clear tomorrow night.
That's why
with a
they
low
were.
near 62.
The trucks were moving out and shit.
Yeah, you know what?
What?
Maybe 9 is not a good time to go.
All right,
Maybe either earlier or later, like before the trucks move out or after they move out. Maybe 9:30.
Okay.
Or 10.
If I leave at 9:30, I won't get there until 10. Come on, Joe.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing because the trucks be gone by then.
Come on, Joe.
You know that? Oh, that was fun.
You had fun?
Oh, yeah.
You had your club shirt on. Daddy brought you lunch.
Hung out with like 15 women.
Good.
No lesbians this time, though.
Okay.
That poor woman from California is terrified of driving here because she said there's no reflectors on the roads.
You know what, Joe?
What?
Know that.
She said that the lanes are more narrow. There's no reflectors on the road. She can't see.
Okay.
Her mama showed up and came to visit, and her mom said, "I never seen you so nervous about driving." She's like, "I can't see." And I said, "That's why I don't like driving very much." Okay. But yeah, I said, that's why I don't like driving very much. Right here. How was it? Wonderful.
You meet anybody?
Yeah.
Who?
There's some people, Actually, I thought of you, Mommy, because there was two teachers there.
Yeah?
Yeah, and they were talking about how bad the Rugrats are.
What school?
Oakhurst.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were young though. And they, like, one of them was from California and one of them was from Florida, and they were talking about how terrified they are to drive here because there's no reflectors on the roads. And the girl from California was like, my mom came to visit, and she was like, I never seen you so nervous when you're driving. And she's like, I can't see. And I said, you know, that's why I don't like driving very much.
Yeah.
Because I can't see.
Yeah.
And they bust out laughing.
Oh, good. So you had fun?
Yeah.
I'm glad.
And then I got done hanging out with them. I went to get some food. I had some wings. They were young. They were tasty, but they were a bit dry. And there was a bunch of kids.
Little kids?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Like, I was going to get my food and they were running around. I was like, oh, shit. I can't hear. I can't hear. I can't see. I don't want to get any of these kids hurt.
So what'd you do?
So I just surveyed the area for the voices of adults and went where I thought I heard them.
Okay. Do you have help getting your wings to your table?
Yeah. I had help getting my wings and it was 5-10 minutes, so I went and got another beer. And I went back out, and just as soon as I got back to the truck, my pager rang.
Okay. What was the name of the truck?
I think it was just called Wings and Fries. I don't know that I would get them again because they were pretty dry. Their seasoning was really good. They were very dry.
But did you have fun?
Yep.
I'm so glad.
But yeah, I thought of you because they were... Oh! You know what I forgot to tell you?
What?
I forgot to tell Daddy. There were some people there. They were throwing their dog a birthday party because of turning 18.
18?
Yeah, they were throwing their dog an 18th birthday party.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
It was a little toy poodle. I didn't get to pet it because, I don't know, all the friends were like smitten over it. Didn't make it down where I was.
All right. Glad you had fun.
Yeah, it was lots of fun.
Tomorrow.
See ya.
You and Dad
Hey,
going to Monroe?
no, Gastonia.
Gastonia?
Cowboy water
Okay.
and cheeseburger pizza. You want me to bring you some home?
Sure.
Good, because you know what? There's another pizza they have there that's crazy-er, and I want to try it. And I'll probably end up bringing some of the cheeseburger home.
Okay.
I'll let you do some more girl talk.
Thanks, Joe. I love you.
Love you too. Hey, Daddy.
Finley?
I love you, Daddy.
No, it doesn't work.